I've been helping out at our town's library for almost 5 years. Most days are calm, finding books for people, checking them in and out, and reminding teenagers to stay quiet during study time. But since it's a public place, I sometimes run into difficult people. After getting my degree in library sciences, I was thrilled to land this job. Our library might be small, but it's the heart of our community. We host reading clubs for kids, computer classes for seniors, and provide a safe space for everyone. I take my responsibilities seriously, especially when it comes to protecting our patrons. One of our strictest policies is about privacy. If someone calls or comes in looking for another person, we're absolutely not allowed to confirm if that person is in the building. This might sound extreme, but there are good reasons. Domestic disputes, custody battles, or even just someone trying to find someone they want to fight. The rule is simple. We protect everyone's privacy, no exceptions. Yesterday started like any normal day. I was working the circulation desk while my coworker managed the reference section, computer lab, and study rooms. Around 6 p.m., I got a call that would set off a chain of events I'm still processing. I answered the phone with my standard greeting, identifying myself as a representative of the county library and asking how I could help. The woman on the other end immediately asked about her daughter, describing a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl in a pink shirt who should be at the library with another lady. I politely explained our policy that we couldn't tell her who was in the building because we had no way to verify her identity over the phone. She responded with shock, clearly not understanding the policy. I clarified again that we couldn't confirm if any child was present because we had no way to verify she was the parent. She cursed under her breath, and I could hear her pull away from the phone. In the background, she yelled to someone that the library wouldn't tell her if her daughter was there because they couldn't verify she was the parent of her own daughter. Then she abruptly hung up. I immediately warned my coworker that we might have an angry visitor soon. Sure enough, about 15 minutes later, a woman stormed into the library, her face flushed with anger. She loudly demanded to know where her daughter was. I reminded her that we were in a library and asked her to lower her voice. I repeated what I'd said on the phone, that we couldn't confirm who was here, but she was welcome to look around the public areas. She refused to lower her voice, called me a jerk, and demanded again to know where her daughter was. I repeated that I couldn't tell her anything and warned that if she didn't lower her voice and watch her language, I'd have to call the police to escort her out. For context, our library is literally across the street from the police station. We're practically neighbors, which comes in handy more often than you'd think. The woman huffed but quieted down and started searching the library. We're not very big, so it only took her about 5 minutes to check every public area. When she couldn't find what she was looking for, she came back to my desk, now even more agitated. She told me she couldn't find her daughter in the public areas and announced she was going to check in the staff area, pointing to the door marked staff only behind my desk. I told her she couldn't go back there, explaining it was a staff only area and allowing her access would be a liability issue. She insisted her daughter could be back there, which made no sense since the door required a key to open. I gave her a final refusal and asked her to leave, telling her she was being disruptive. She shouted her refusal and declared she was calling the police because we were holding her daughter hostage. Before I could even finish expressing my confusion, she had her phone out and was actually dialing 911. I stood there, completely dumbfounded. About 5 minutes later, 3 police cars pulled up outside with their lights flashing. As the officers walked in, the woman started screeching again. She told the officers we had her daughter locked up in the back and wouldn't let her out. The first police officer looked confused. I explained our policy and the situation, then unlocked the staff area so they could check, just to be thorough. She smirked at me and asked sarcastically if that had been so hard, calling me an idiot. The second officer told her there was no one in the back and asked if she knew where her daughter was last. She insisted that her daughter had been here and complained that I wouldn't tell her if her daughter was present or not. I explained to the officers that our policy exists to prevent people from finding others they shouldn't be in contact with. including children and custody disputes. I elaborated that we couldn't confirm she was the parent because photos don't help determine if there are court orders in place. The first officer just shook her head and asked the woman if I had already explained this to her. The woman admitted I had but started to choke up before she could finish, crocodile tears forming. Just then, a woman and a young girl walked into the library with snacks and drinks from the gas station down the street. The woman immediately spotted the crying woman and her eyes widened in anger. The stepmother demanded to know why she was there, asking if she had come to see the girl and pointing out how insane that was. She referenced previous discussions with the girl's father about how the mother couldn't just show up trying to see her daughter. The mother pleaded that she missed her baby and just wanted to see her. The stepmother harshly reminded her that she had lost that right when she left the girl in a car to buy drugs and disappeared for hours, adding that she was lucky the child was even alive. The mother completely broke down sobbing. The officers split up. Two stayed with the mother while the third spoke with the stepmother and the child. After about 10 minutes of conversation, I saw handcuffs come out. Apparently, the mother had violated a restraining order by trying to contact her daughter, and the call to 911 with false claims was just the icing on the cake. When they led the mother to the police car, she was still yelling about how unfair everything was and how I was to blame for not just telling her if her daughter was here. The stepmother came over to thank me for following policy. She expressed gratitude for protecting her stepdaughter, explaining that the girl's mother wasn't supposed to be within 500 feet of her because she was dangerous when using drugs. I nodded and assured her that's exactly why we have these policies. After they left, my co-worker and I just looked at each other in shock. I guess sometimes those seemingly annoying library policies really do protect people. And if you're ever wondering why a librarian won't tell you if someone is in the building, now you know. I've been in Beijing for about 2 years now. My dad's job brought him here, and since I wasn't working at the time, I came along. The first few months were tough. I didn't know much Mandarin, everything felt unfamiliar, and I stood out a lot as one of the few non-Asian people around. At first, the stares bothered me, but over time I got used to it. That's just part of being an expat. My dad and I have a little tradition where every Friday we cook a nice dinner together. It's our way of unwinding after the work week and catching up. This Friday, he asked if I could pick up some fresh snapper from the market while he prepared the rest of the meal. The market was bustling as usual. People shouting prices, the smell of fresh produce and fish, and the constant hum of haggling in rapid Mandarin. I'd become pretty good at navigating it all, and I'd even learned enough Mandarin to bargain a little. After about 20 minutes of looking around, I found a stall with some beautiful snapper. The vendor and I went back and forth on the price for a bit, and I walked away with a great deal. I was heading toward the exit, mentally planning which route to take home, when a woman suddenly appeared in front of me. She was blonde, probably in her 40s, and definitely not Chinese. From the moment she opened her mouth, I could hear the strong American accent. The woman rudely asked if I was meant to be somewhere else. I responded with confusion, not understanding what she meant. She then bluntly stated that I wasn't from there, like it was some kind of accusation. I pointed out that judging from her accent, she wasn't from Beijing either. The woman admitted this was obvious, then called me Missy and threatened to get a police officer because I supposedly shouldn't be there. I told her to go ahead, explaining that they would see my working visa and let me go. She just told me to wait. So there we stood, me clutching my bag of fish, wondering if this was really happening, and her scanning the crowd with this self-righteous look on her face. What made it even more absurd was that there were actually several police officers not far from us. They were often around the busier markets. She just hadn't noticed them. After a few minutes of this standoff, I checked the time on my phone and realized I needed to get home. I told the woman I was late and needed to get home because my dad was waiting for the fish. That's when things got crazy. This woman actually grabbed my arm hard and shoved me down to the ground. Before I knew what was happening, she had her knee pressed against my face, pinning me to the dirty market floor. I started yelling for help in both English and my broken Mandarin. My fish had spilled out of its bag and was now lying in the dirt. Meanwhile, the woman was shouting that she was detaining me, claiming I was there illegally, and demanding someone call immigration. People were starting to gather around us, watching in shock. The woman kept yelling in English about how I was an illegal immigrant who needed to be deported immediately. Thankfully, those police officers I'd spotted earlier came running over. They pulled the woman off me and helped me to my feet. My cheek was throbbing where her knee had pressed into it. The woman kept trying to explain herself to the officers, speaking loudly in English as if volume would overcome the language barrier. She was insisting to the officer that I was illegal and didn't belong there, demanding they arrest me. My Mandarin isn't perfect, but I managed to explain to the officers what had happened. That this stranger had assaulted me for no reason while I was simply buying fish for dinner. I showed them my ID and visa. The officers nodded and told me I was free to go. One of them even helped me gather up my snapper, which unfortunately was no longer usable. He spoke a little English and apologized for what had happened. When I was leaving, I looked back to see about 7 officers surrounding the woman. She was gesturing wildly, still trying to make her case, while they looked increasingly stern. When I got home and told my dad what happened, he was shocked at first, then we both ended up laughing at the sheer absurdity of it all. Who appoints themselves immigration police in a foreign country? The vendor was nice enough to give me a discount on a new snapper when I explained what happened to my first purchase. And let me tell you, that replacement snapper was amazing. Nothing like a little drama to make dinner taste even better. For the last 3 years, I've worked at Medieval Times, a place where guests watch jousting while eating without utensils. The job helps pay for my college, and I actually enjoyed dressing up and calling people my lady or my lord. Most days it's just serving tourists and families looking for some fun, but today was different. Texas heat in May is no joke. I'm talking about the kind of heat that makes you question why humans ever settled in this state. The air conditioning in our venue had been struggling all week, and today it finally gave up entirely. Inside the castle, it was pushing 90 degrees, and all of us employees were sweating through our medieval costumes. I had just opened my register at the gift shop when I spotted her approaching, a woman with a scowl, dragging a little girl who looked exhausted from crying. My customer service instincts kicked in automatically. I greeted her with our standard welcome, calling her my lady and asking how I could help her today. She immediately snapped at me, demanding that I call her ma'am instead of lady. I apologized and explained that we were trained to address all guests that way, but she dismissed my explanation with a curt whatever. She then shoved a voucher in my face for a free announcement during the show. She didn't ask nicely, she demanded that I process it right away. I apologetically explained that I hadn't been trained to handle announcements and directed her to the main office near the entrance. This made her even more irritated. She complained that she was already here and insisted it was my job to help her, drawing out the word job in an exaggerated way. She added that it was for her daughter's special day, as if that would change my ability to process her request. At this point, the little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. The child, showing more maturity than her mother, told her that it was okay and that I was just doing my job and didn't know how to handle announcements yet. The woman bent down to her daughter with an exaggerated sigh and told her she was sorry they had to wait in line because the mean man wouldn't help them on her special day. I tried again to give directions to the announcement desk, even offering to personally walk them partway there. As they walked away, I could hear the woman muttering insults about me, calling me lazy, useless, and even a lazy Mexican. I chose to ignore it. After 6 hours of dealing with similar attitudes in sweltering heat, my patience was wearing thin. Later that afternoon, management finally acknowledged the heat problem. Our bar manager called all the gift shop employees to come get complimentary small slushies to help us cool down. I was at the end of the employee line when I noticed the same woman from earlier standing in the regular customer line about to pay for her drinks. When she spotted me getting a free slushie, something inside her snapped. She abandoned her place in line and walked over to the employee section. She demanded a slushie from the bartender, even specifying that she wanted a large one. The bartender looked confused and explained that these free slushies were only for employees who had been working in the heat all day. The woman then claimed her baby was burning up because of our faulty air conditioning and that her child was thirsty and dying. The bartender reminded her that admission included free drinks and bottomless refills for all guests. This wasn't good enough for her. She whined that those weren't slushies and demanded one immediately, threatening to report the bartender to management if she didn't get her way. The bartender simply shrugged and went back to mixing drinks. That's when the woman spotted me with my freshly made blue raspberry slushie. She stormed over and cleared her throat dramatically. She pointed at my drink and demanded that I give her my slushie. She claimed her daughter deserved a free slushie and that I could get another one later. She ordered me to hand it over as if I were obligated to obey her. I sipped my slushie while staring at her, utterly bewildered. I tried to explain that I'd already started drinking from it and didn't feel comfortable sharing something with my saliva on it. I suggested she purchase one at the counter, mentioning they only cost $4. She cut me off mid-sentence, insisting she didn't care and demanding I give her the slushie immediately. She then called me an ugly idiot. Now I consider myself a patient person. Customer service has taught me to let most insults roll off my back. But after 6 hours in sweltering heat, being sleep-deprived and hungry, something in me snapped. I told her off, calling her a witch and suggesting she look in a mirror before calling others ugly. I revealed that I had initially planned to offer buying her one with my employee discount, but after her behavior, she wouldn't be getting anything from me. I ended by telling her to have a good day and turned to leave. I turned to walk away. That's when I felt a sharp, painful tug on my hair. This woman had actually grabbed my ponytail and was yanking on it while screaming about the slushie and demanding I apologize. Without thinking, I spun around and my slushie went flying, right into her face and all over her blouse. She lunged at me, scratching my face and arms. Security finally intervened, pulling her away as she screamed about suing me for assault. While security was dealing with her, I noticed her daughter standing alone, looking embarrassed and frightened. The little girl apologized for her mother's behavior and hoped I wasn't hurt. She explained that her mother was always like this, which is why she had wished her father had brought her to the venue instead. My heart broke for her. I went to the bar, paid for a slushie myself, and brought it to her before security took them both away. The smile on her face was worth the $4. Management gave me the rest of the day off to recover. I later found out that the woman was banned from the venue and received a citation for assault. Apparently, this wasn't her first incident of this kind. All of this drama, the scratches, the shouting, the hair pulling over a $4 slushie that she could have easily purchased herself. Some people's entitlement truly knows no bounds. Theater has always been my passion. There's something special about making a story come alive on stage. I've spent the last 7 years working in technical theater, focusing on lighting and sound. Most projects have been tough but satisfying, until I crossed paths with a writer-producer I'll call Karen. A mutual friend suggested me as a director for Karen's show. The script was solid, and she had a great cast, so I agreed to do it. What I didn't realize was that the last director had quit out of nowhere. Looking back, I should have asked why. My first rehearsal was eye-opening. Karen sat in the corner with her script, interrupting every few minutes. She loudly demanded that everyone stop when an actor said them instead of they, insisting this completely changed the meaning of the line. I tried to suggest we continue the scene since it was a small mistake we could easily fix, but Karen refused, demanding they start again from the top of the page. This pattern continued for the entire rehearsal. Karen never watched the performances, she just kept her head buried in her script, marking every tiny deviation. After rehearsal, I tried to talk to her about directorial choices I wanted to make. I explained my idea for staging a scene with a spotlight that gradually narrows. Karen immediately shot down the idea, stating she wanted the whole stage lit. When I tried to explain that lighting design is about creating mood, she cut me off by claiming that since she wrote the show, she knew what it needed. This became our routine. I would suggest something based on my years of experience. She would shoot it down, I would explain why my suggestion made sense, and after 20 minutes of back and forth, she would reluctantly agree. Despite Karen's micromanaging, the cast was incredible. The only reason they stayed was because Karen constantly dangled her industry connections in front of them. She boasted about having producers from major companies coming to opening night. Karen repeatedly promised them that after the show closed, she would introduce all of them to her network. 2 weeks before Tech Week, I realized something alarming. I asked Karen who our lighting designer was. She seemed confused and admitted she thought I would handle all technical aspects of the show. I had to explain that directors don't typically run tech, and we needed a lighting designer, sound operator, and stage manager. I nearly walked out right then, but I looked at the cast and knew I couldn't abandon them. I called every favor I had in the theater community and somehow pulled everything together. Despite all the obstacles, opening night was amazing. The audience loved it. Karen had hired someone to professionally film 2 performances, which turned out great visually, though the audio wasn't perfect. After the final curtain call, the cast asked Karen about her promised connections. When they inquired about getting the industry contacts information, Karen bluntly stated she didn't want them bothering her friends as it would reflect poorly on her. I confronted Karen by email, insisting that she needed to share the contact list as promised. She declared it was no longer any of my business and that my job was done. A week later, Karen emailed me again. She was submitting the recorded performance to a festival and needed all the sound files, marked script, and technical notes right away. I reminded her of her own words that I was not to do any more work on this project. Then I deleted everything, all the files, the sound effects, the lighting cues. Without those materials, she'd have to start from scratch if she wanted to remount the show. Karen called me repeatedly that day, eventually offering to pay me for the files. But it was too late. The last I heard, her festival submission was rejected due to poor audio quality.